hit of the week is, of course, the exhibition of ritualists' achievements in the Moscow Expo Center, with fancy coffins and dressing up the dead for speed. Such an infernal hint to mobiles, everyone will be there, take your pick while you can. Although a coffin for a mobile phone is a luxury, not every one of them even gets packaged. Most will go to feed stray dogs and voracious worms, because only Putin will remain in the cave. Now he's utilizing the bipeds as much as he can. After that, he will move to the bunker, and from there he will finish off everyone in a row. To be sure, Biden said, Putin cannot remain in power, and if so, then there is only one prospect, to fire missiles to the last, until they shied away with an anti-bunker bomb. There are rumors that Putin is dragging himself around the elders. He visited Optina Hermitage, dropped into Sarov, he kissed the nuclear relics. Allegedly, he, the miserable, should receive a blessing from 12 elders, as from 12 apostles. After that, he will be visited by enlightenment and the determination to deliver a fateful blow, which will turn the course of the war towards a miraculous victory. Given the stubbornness of the patient, these rumors may well be true. Listen to what Patrushev says about dirty bombs, or Nebenzia about fighting mosquitoes, and you will understand that this whole gang of miracle gopniks lives in its own dimension, where hot gays roam the streets of freezing Europe, and vile NATO soldiers surreptitiously send them into the Russian sky-infected pigeons. Meanwhile, the reality is that right during the video conference with members of the government, the light went out in the leading ministries. The end of the world immediately covered 3 skyscrapers of the Moscow city complex, including those where the Ministry of Economic Development, the Ministry of Industry and Trade and the Ministry of Communications are located. This event was reflected in the live broadcast of the meeting with Putin. Ministers Reshetnikov and Mancharov languished in the dark for some time. And it's time to get used to it. After all, the light in the cave is nonsense. Around Putin himself, various power groups perform dances with tambourines, trying to intercept the chance to influence the leader. But the leader himself does not yet give preference to anyone. A couple more negative victories, and the dogs of war will clash with each other, shaking the throne of the pharaoh. In the meantime, Vasil Kimzov is shaking either Sobchak or Karolov, biting off sirloin media pieces, and causing a slight thrill in the first echelon of cannibalism. The deep-sea explorers are also in awe, but from mobilization. Anxious 63% of Russians dominate the unflappable 32%, and 54% complain about the rapid rise in prices for essential goods and food. Companies and brands continue to leave the mournful territory. The G7 countries agree on a price ceiling for Russian oil, and the curses of the classic drunken clowning Medvedev rush after them. So they were not our friends, but just random fellow travelers, sticky and hangers-on. Let their bones rot in a foreign land. The only sidekicks that remained with the lads are the Iranian miracle Ayatollahs, but the hated Biden also promised to release Iran soon. True, without specifying when exactly. There is, of course, a friend of Tokayev, who supplies Chinese spare parts for tanks and missiles through Kazakhstan. But Tokayev alone is clearly not enough. There are no miracle heroes on the fronts. One Solovyov the robber beats in ethereal hysterics every day, and even the return of Krasovsky does not improve the situation. If Gurulev already proposes to urgently summon the spirit of the miracle Goebbels by establishing a ministry of propaganda. But after all, and there too the light can be cut down, and it seems that no miracle will leave Kherson in fraternal occupation. The head of the Pentagon, Austin, openly stated, "I believe that Ukraine will occupy Kherson." Against the backdrop of the inevitable defeat in the war, the maggots of the system of good Russians are actively stirring, who are in a hurry to establish both a government in exile and a parliament, and untwist a hastily scribbled website of a certain civil council where you can sign up as a volunteer. And, of course, make a donation. A little more, and the river of donations will float away from Volkov into the right hands of the ex-deputy Ponomarev, who, by the way, has the correct Ukrainian citizenship, inherited from the time of Poroshenko. The main idea is to hook Zelensky, to beg him for the recognition of the government, parliament, civil council, whatever. If only the president of Ukraine pointed to a certain force from the good Russians, with whom he could, in principle, sit down at the negotiating table. And then the power in the stub of the empire will smoothly flow to the miraculous schemers from the opposition. But this miracle is hardly feasible. Without a complete defeat, disintegration with the process of sobering up and awareness of the virus of fascism cannot be got rid of. Therefore, everything will be tough and point by point. Miracle schemes won't work, and the depth explorers need to prepare for the collapse of the imperial foundations in the very near future. It will be a magnificent funeral, not only of the pharaoh, but of all his servants. So take a closer look at the coffin exhibition while you can. Is she already the last one?